Hey Tommy, I gotta say, I think Ford has done a brilliant job in marketing the new Bronco. You know why?
Why is that, Dad?
Well, because when is it coming out?
Well, it launched last month, but the Bronco Sport, the small one, is supposed to hit dealerships at the end of this year.
Yep.
And then the one everyone's excited for, the big Bronco, spring of 2021.
Yeah, probably June.
Yeah, it's looking like more early summer 2021.
And Ford has been brilliantly marketing it because they've gotten pretty much everybody, well, that we know of, to say that it is not only better than a Wrangler, but they've done that without actually having anybody drive one outside of Ford. So coming up after the Open, I'm going to lay it out for you. But first, if you guys are interested in our t-shirts that we're wearing, click on the link below and help support Team TFL. So Tommy, the point I think of good PR and good marketing is to get people to buy a vehicle. And I think Ford has created an incredible amount of hype and reservations for the new Bronco without, like I said, anybody actually getting their hands on one.
I agree. I mean, right now there's a tremendous amount of excitement around the vehicle. But my question is there too big of a delay between when they showed the vehicle and when it will actually be available in dealerships? I think that by mid-2021, when you're realistically going to be able to go out and purchase a Bronco, I'm not sure the hype is still going to be there for this vehicle.
Yeah, well, let's break it down between the Bronco and the Bronco Sport. So the Bronco Sport is basically what?
Well, it's basically a squared off Escape with some more off-road capability. So they took a unibody platform, they added some off-road modes, they changed the styling around, added some cool colors, and are marketing it as more of an adventure lifestyle vehicle.
Yeah, and that's not the one we're talking about, right?
No, we're talking about the one that is super buzzworthy. It's the one right behind me. It's the full-size Bronco is what I'm going to call it. It's the competitor to the Wrangler. You can pull the roof off, the doors off. It's got low-range transfer case. It's got up to 35-inch tall tires from the factory. That's the really cool one that everyone is all freaking out about. But my issue is, I'm a little worried that Ford has waited too long to actually bring this into the dealerships, because they launched this vehicle on July 13th, and then they said spring 2021. Well, leaks have kind of proven that's going to be more like, June 2021, and only for the launch editions, which are $65,000. And I think by the time you guys out there are going to be able to go buy one, it'll probably be July or August. Then you've got to deal with the big markups. And I think by then, I'm not sure the people are actually going to go out and spend their hard-earned money on this vehicle. Maybe I'm wrong.
The brilliant part of Ford's strategy is that they've been able to get their message out without actually getting the counter message out at all, right? So what they've done is they first kind of co-opted most of the off-road publications, and let's face it, Tommy, there aren't a lot of publications that actually test vehicles off-road, right? Most automotive journalists live or work in New York, Michigan, or LA, and they don't really take vehicles off-road, right?
Right.
And what Ford did was brilliantly basically create a message about the new Bronco, and it may be true, it may not be true, we don't know, we've never driven one, that it is not only a Wrangler competitor, but that it is actually better off-road than the Wrangler. And that's a pretty tall order without actually anybody independent getting their hands behind the steering wheel.
Well, here's an interesting thing, right? They have this Bronco Nation that they've really been pushing. It's supposed to be a community of Bronco owners.
Isn't that done by Ford?
It is,
okay.
Yeah. It's run by Ford.
But it looks like its owners.
Yeah, it's a pretty big YouTube channel actually online. And basically what Ford has been doing is posting videos of the Bronco tackling.
Brilliant.
Well, hang on, tackling trails in Moab, Hell's Revenge, tackling the Rubicon Trail.
Yep.
And that looks great. But it's important to realize that these are videos done by Ford, for potential buyers of the Bronco. They're never going to show the Bronco really getting stuck. They're never going to show the parts where they have to stack the rocks or winch over the rocks. And here's my issue with some of these videos is, yes, it will go down the Rubicon Trail. That's a very impressive feat. But a lot of vehicles will go down the Rubicon Trail at least once. Our buddy Rick Payway over at Motor Trend.
Take a flat fender.
Yeah, he was doing the Rubicon Trail on 28-inch tires, snow tires back in the day, open diffs. He was able to do them. Now I'm not saying that to discount the Rubicon Trail. It's still very impressive. But the fact of the matter is, when we ran the Rubicon Trail in fully equipped Wranglers, even lifted Wranglers, there's a lot of pushing. There's a lot of rock stacking that I think that you guys want to see to know how the vehicle will really perform, because these videos are only going to show you what Ford wants you to see. What I want to see is someone go down the Rubicon Trail independently testing it. That would prove to me that, yes, this Bronco is able to do it. I want to see all the scrapes and all the crunches and all the times it needs to be pushed, so I really know how it will perform in the real world, where it will get hung up, what are the weaknesses, but also what are the positives, because it does look like a pretty badass vehicle. I just need an independent tester to go out there and prove that it is.
So that's why Ford is so brilliant, right? Because they've actually, I think, were able to convince a lot of people out there in the audience that Bronco Nation is a bunch of owners, when in fact it's just Ford doing very fancy advertising and marketing, right? Instead of actually Ford having independent testers. So it looks like it's owners or people out in the field with cameras that are hiding behind bushes, stuff that we do, right? But in fact, it's all very well documented and produced, and I would even say orchestrated advertising to make the Bronco look really potentially better than a Wrangler.
I do appreciate that they're doing that, because it is cool seeing this new rig tackle the trails. But here's the thing: sometimes I can get a little bit seedy. Because seedy. The head of PR for Ford and everyone was freaking out because they showed this one video, I think it was on Hell's Revenge, of the Bronco Sport, the small Bronco, climbing up this ledge, and then this Wrangler on big off-road tires got stuck.
I saw the video.
And I read all over the forums and a lot of websites, oh, look at this, the Bronco Sport can go places that a Wrangler can't go. If you read the marketing, that is kind of what they're suggesting. But if you read through the marketing, that's not true at all, because there are, of course, instances where a smaller, lighter vehicle will go further. But you get that vehicle, that Bronco Sport, on a rock more than 8 inches tall, and it's going to be pretty beached, whereas that Wrangler on 37s is going to be able to accomplish the terrain. You can set up any vehicle to look bad in certain situations. Now, I'm coming across as a major Jeep fanboy right now.
Right.
I understand that. But I really am super excited for this Bronco. I'm just worried that by the time these actually hit the dealership lots, I'm not sure that people are willing to spend $65,000 on a launch edition.
So like I said, there are very few publications that actually test vehicles off-road, right? We're one of them. We've spent the last 10 years doing Gold Mine Hill, doing Tombstone, going to Moab, taking everything that can go off-road. And I think Ford has done a really brilliant job in co-opting those publications or shutting them down, right? So they basically shut us down by not giving us access to the Bronco. So, if we are able to actually test it, we're going to have to do so by either buying one, which is, painful if the company doesn't work for us, or actually getting an owner to give us one. And by the way, if you've got one ordered and you want us to test it and you're willing to have us tested for real, we'd love to hear from you. They recently did a program last week in Canada where basically they brought out the Bronco Sport, put it on a lawn, and had all the journalists kind of ooh and ah, but not get behind the wheel. And then I think the week before then, they set up a course, right, where they flew a bunch of journalists in and gave them rides. And didn't actually have them get behind the wheel. And most of those reviews were very positive, right? Because these guys don't actually test vehicles off-road. So they got to ride along. They went on a course that Ford basically designed, and they came back, oohing and ahhing about the new Bronco because, well, they never got a chance to actually compare it to anything or put it on something that wasn't designed by Ford for it to do easily. I think that's brilliant.
I mean, we've done a lot of those drives too, where you're going over a set course that the manufacturer produces, but we're always very clear about it. That this is a course set up by X.
Right. And they're not going to set up a course.
No, but they're never going to make a course that they always set up courses that look visually cool. Like,
whoa, there's cool. A video. Yeah.
There's a splash and there's a hill and there's a big sign. Like that's cool. But it's important that when you're reading these articles, you look through that and you're like, yes, this is cool. But it's important to keep in mind that they never drove the thing. They were all ride-alongs. And that the courses were pretty tame. Now, of course, the other manufacturer trick they do is the manufacturers know that a lot of these journalists have no off-roading experience or don't really care about off-roading.
Right, it's not their thing.
Any kind of off-roading is like, woo! That was awesome, right? That this vehicle could tackle anything when really it's like a hill. And we've done that a ton too. We've gone up a lot of hills that look cool, but really don't prove a whole lot. So, I mean, I'm really excited to see how the Bronco will perform when it gets into independent hands, because that's when you'll officially know whether or not this is going to be a proper competitor to the Ford or a proper competitor to the Wrangler.
What's happened really, Tommy, is once upon a time, right, there were 4 publications that all the editorial had to go through. I'm talking about the 4 Buff books, right? Car and Driver, Road and Track, Automobile, right? All those Buff books, right? If you were a car enthusiast, you would probably read those, and then those publications would do a lot of independent testing. Consumer Reports was around, of course, doing safety testings, but for the most part, that's where people got their reviews from. The internet came around and completely broke that model, right? So now everybody's got a YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And the manufacturers have realized that there is now possibility to get their message out without actually having anybody with any real experience actually tested, right? Because if you're an influencer, then you get paid to promote the product, right? An Instagram influencer is getting paid, and sometimes it could be hundreds, sometimes it could be thousands, sometimes it could be tens of thousands to just promote a product. And so why would the manufacturer want to hand over a vehicle that could potentially get a negative review or could somehow potentially be shown to be not as capable to an independent publication when they could give it to somebody who's just going to, rubber stamp that this thing is, exceptionally well suited for whatever purpose they built it for, and they've taken advantage of that. I've seen it, not just Ford, they're all doing it, right? I've seen, and Bronco Nation is the ultimate expression of that.
I mean, it's a dangerous precedent you're setting, though, because especially with something like a Bronco Sport, people see the influencers raving about how incredible it is off-road, and then they take it into something that the Bronco Sport shouldn't be, because it really is a rebadged or rebodied Escape, I should say, with some more cool differential stuff. Right. And then they get in over their head and they get stuck. Then that paid influencer has done them a disservice because they have ventured into something that is beyond the vehicle's capabilities, and they're putting the vehicle in harm's way, or the terrain or the landscape or themselves in harm's way. Now, another interesting thing I'd like to bring up too is this model of releasing the vehicle to the public in images and then launching it a year later is also done by one manufacturer all the time.
Okay, who's that?
Tesla.
All right.
So Tesla launches a vehicle, and a couple of years later,
Model 3, Model Y.
and they're still massive hits.
Right.
But what Tesla does, which is interesting, is whenever they reveal a new vehicle, it typically has some crazy, outlandish, futuristic tech or design that seems impossible today, but somehow they manage to pull it off 2 years down the road. So like the Roadster, when it launched a couple years ago, they said 600-mile battery. That was like, whatever. But when that vehicle hits the lot, I'm willing to bet that Tesla has improved the battery technology enough where 600 miles is feasible.
So are you saying that Ford had to include rockets in the Bronco to make
it? But my issue is...
like the Roadster to make it cool a year from now?
This vehicle, I think, in a lot of ways has surpassed the Wrangler.
Right.
But I'm not sure it has surpassed the Wrangler enough for that year's gap for people to stay excited. Because that year's gap gives Jeep a lot of time to come back with something cool, and
like a V8 Hemi.
Yeah, and it gives Jeep a lot of time to do something that Jeep is really good at. Massive discounts, right?
Yeah.
And there is a huge number of Bronco enthusiasts where all they're going to buy is a Bronco. That's going to be great for the first year. But there's a huge number of enthusiasts who have a limited pocketbook.
And maybe what you're saying is that there might be some price escalation.
I would say market adjustments is the word they use at the dealer. But basically you walk in, cars an MSRP of 45, all of a sudden there's so much buzz around it. For a little while it's 50. Or you can walk into the Jeep dealer, MSRP of 45. Jeep knows that that thing is a huge deal. Maybe you can get that Wrangler for like 40 or 37.
All right, I have a question for you guys. You said 50. Dude, if I look at the Type R Honda,
no,
right?
The first month you're going to see
the Corvette. I'm thinking you're looking at markups of over 20K easily. What do you guys think?
For the first month, there's going to be insane markups. But I'm talking about when people can actually go and buy
I would not be surprised if some dealership out there will be selling Broncos launch editions for 100K.
Yeah. But I think my whole point with this argument is if you're going to wait a year to actually start selling vehicles, it better have next year's technology in it. And while this is, I think, more impressive than a Wrangler in terms of performance in a lot of ways, I'm not sure on paper. I'm not sure it's a years out more impressive than the Wrangler. Because, if you know these manufacturers, they're not just going to stick around. Jeep's either going to do crazy discounts, they're going to do the V8, they're going to rush or they're going to work crazy hard to get the plug-in hybrid out at a lower cost. It's a risky move. And then we've got the sleeping giant in the room.
which is Tesla.
No, Tesla.
Who's the sleeping giant?
Toyota.
Oh, you mean with the FJ potentially coming back?
I think there's going to be a new 4Runner soon.
Okay.
And it's going to be amazing because Toyota's really been pushing the envelope in some of the areas, especially with trucks. We've heard of like hybrids coming and twin turbos coming to the Tundra. So what is that new 4Runner going to be like? And if Toyota can launch a 4Runner before these start hitting dealers, and that 4Runner or that FJ Cruiser is incredible, Ford might have some competition. Because I thought the Defender would do that. I don't think the Defender is going to be much competition to the Bronco, but Toyota could do something amazing.
So 2 points. I'll give you the year out is a long time, especially with, and maybe I'm the only one who thinks this, but I think that the TRX, the 702 horsepower Ram Raptor Killer, is actually going to compete with the Bronco. I think a lot of people, when they'll have a choice between them, I know that two are technically very different, but price-wise, they're not that different. And given the choice between 702 horsepower and 300 horsepower, I'd go with 702. But that's a whole other video for another time. But what I think we have here, Tommy, is something that is, at the end of the day, good for consumers.
Right.
Right. Because what we're seeing is a battle among the off-roaders. And, you know, at the end of the day, in America at least, and thankfully, price is what determines a lot of buying decisions. You can have as much sparkle as you want, but it's you know, the number at the bottom of the contract that will determine whether, you know, you buy a Wrangler or a Bronco or a new 4Runner. And I think you have to agree that no matter how these things are marketed, we're all in for, you know, a really interesting and I think good for consumer war when it comes to great off-roaders.
Yeah, and one
price war.
Yeah, and it's going to just improve everyone, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be good for the industry. We're going to see a better Wrangler.
Yeah, I'm looking for rockets. I want to see rockets.
The Bronco.
I want to see rockets and I want to see batteries.
Yeah. So one other point we need to make too, which is interesting. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently how the Jeep is dead, and how STA is going to be really upset, and how the Wrangler is no more. I'm not even sure that Jeep is all that upset because they've had 24 years to build Jeep after Jeep after Jeep, and Ford and GM for the most part did nothing to respond. The JK sold over 1 million copies, 1 million Jeeps, and Ford did nothing to respond. GM did nothing to respond. Toyota had a brilliant product, the 4Runner, which I think is probably better than the JK. At least they were really in the game. But Jeep has had their fun in the sun. I think even if the Wrangler were to go away, which it won't, because there's a ton of Jeep fans out there, they would probably be okay with it because they've made so many tens or hundreds of millions on the Wrangler over even the last decade that they're sitting pretty happy.
Yeah, anyway, guys, let us know in the comments below if you think I'm right or if you think Tommy's right or if you've got a whole different take on kind of this unique approach to selling the Bronco. And as always, remember, if you like our t-shirts, help support Team TFL by buying one of these by clicking on the link below. And of course, check out what, Tommy?
TFL Car and TFLTruck.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.
See you guys next time. Ciao.